The words that I speak out today are words that Reverend Kayla wrote and that she shares, and I will read in the first person, but please know that this is Rev Kayla's story. I grew up in a family like some, or perhaps many of you, affected by mental health struggles, addiction, and poverty. When I was 7 years old, my family moved 20 minutes up the road to a different, more wealthy town than the one that both of my parents had grown up in. Our move, for me, seemed to mark some sort of intentional space my nuclear family created from our wider families. I don't know if this was a motivation for our move, but it was an outcome. In ways I could see clearly, my parents were intentional about the boundaries with our family and others. We were not kept away from them completely. We gathered for holidays and made the occasional visit. We even had some in the family who would sometimes live with us for a bit or come over for dinner regularly. I remember one person who had been coming over every week for dinner stopped coming after I overheard a more tense conversation with her and my parents. I never asked what happened, but it seemed clear to me that there were rules and expectations of behavior to be in our home, and these had not been met. My parents' welcome and expression of their love had limits, appropriately. They had a responsibility of protection to their wider family, but more particularly to my brother and I, to themselves, and to our home. They would love their family and care for them as best as they could, and there were some behaviors that were not acceptable because they needed to protect their children. Protection, our desire to protect and to be protected ourselves, is such a basic need. It is our theme this month as we continue to build the house of belief that we can inhabit together. Protection is practically our roof. We ask, what is it that we need protected from, and how are we protected? Today we ask, what is it that we need protection from? The simple answer to this question is evil. And so we ask, what is evil? We see evil in oppression and injustice. It is some having more than enough and some having never enough. It is so ubiquitous, we sometimes stop noticing it, for to be constantly aware would make it nearly impossible to function. We see it when we stop at the intersection, in the faces on the side of the road. We can feel it scratching, woven into the fabric of our clothes, most of them fibers, joined under unjust working conditions in lands far away. The existence of evil and injustice in our world can be sensed so viscerally. So, what is the root to this evil? Theologians of many traditions define sin as separation. We turn again to 20th century theologian Paul Tillich's definition. Tillich writes, "Sin is separation. To be in the state of sin is to be in the state of separation, and separation is threefold. There is separation among individual lives, separation of a man from himself, and separation of all men from the ground of being." This argument goes, The injustice in our world, the oppression in our world is possible because we are separated from one another, from our earth, and from other living beings, and the ground of being, however we define that for ourselves. If we forged connections with others and with our own values, the argument continues, our love and desire to protect all would start to shrink these inequities and make us capable of sharing our resources so that all had enough to survive and to thrive, including our own ill-ridden with climate crisis Earth. The solution here is connection to self, to values, to our ground of being, ultimate, intimate, and to one another, other living beings, and our world and our universe. It seems simple enough, but we know that for many of us, our own needs and the needs of those closest to us always trump those who are further away geographically or relationally, even if their suffering is greater. Our theme for this month, protection, sheds some light on our answer. I think sometimes what we need protection from is our desire to protect. Or more accurately, we need to be aware of where our desire to protect is coming from. Our desire for protection comes both from love and from fear. It is motivated by both love and fear. And I suspect that the balance of these, fear and love, can help us move to a path that can help us create more of the world that we long for. When our fear overcomes our love and our desire to protect, we might sacrifice too much of our connection with ourselves, humanity, and our world. We might try and protect ourselves and others in ways that are not realistic in our world, and it might cause us to lose some of ourselves, our humanity, and hurt our world. Transphobia, from acts of verbal or physical violence to eye rolls, refusing to use someone's pronouns or name, we often hear is rooted in a need to protect someone's own sense of reality, is a fear that someone else could take that away, that others are dismantling a system that we've spent our whole lives invested in. This need to protect our concept of a gender binary becomes harmful to all, including the homophobic person, because fear is driving an aggressive sense of protection, and this separates the aggressor from themselves and from others. The Western world's desire for comfort and ease, for oil and gas, many would argue, is causing the rest of the world to face the most harsh consequences of climate change, something that some of us in the western part of our state has also tragically experienced. Our desire to protect ourselves, create lives of simplicity and ease, have too often been done at the cost of others. In this desire to protect what we care about, sometimes our fear can overrun our love, and this creates the separation that we never intended to have. With ourselves, what or whom we're protecting, and with others too, and with the ground of our being. When our fear outweighs our love, overtakes it, in our desire for protection, I believe we slip into some of the separation that is the source of the evil in our world. We begin to separate in the name of protection, seeking a false sense of safety and security, Safety, security, freedom from pain or suffering is not part of our contract of being human. They are experiences we all will have in this world and in this life. When our protection is motivated by a fear of what we all must experience, we might forget to act from love and connection. We might act separated from ourselves, our values, and humanity, and too often create pain or oppression for others as a result. When we notice ourselves acting from protection of self or others, let us ask ourselves, what of this is coming from fear and what from love? What is this fear of? And is it something we really can have protection from? Our systems are designed to separate us, to make the oppression of some tolerable because of our separation. This is the deep evil of humanity. It is in our world and in ourselves. We must accept that we cannot be protected from suffering and sorrow, and we must choose to risk our love and abandon our illusion of safety so that we can live truly together. Do the internal work that you need to accept that none of us can be fully protected. Say yes to connection. Sign up for a small group. Get involved with our Industrial Areas Foundation or IAF group. Answer the call if you're asked to support and be present for the meeting of groups who are oppressed in our wider community so that they can safely and joyfully meet here. I do not think my parents' boundaries with the rest of their family were motivated more by fear than by love. And I know that the separation I experienced from my family of origin led me on a quest as a young adult to reconnect with my family and people who felt like my family even when I was far away. Though I didn't realize it at the time, I did harm reduction, caring for folks in active addiction to repair and restore relationship with people who were like the family members I didn't have relationships with at the time. I took risks to my own safety, some would say, providing safe use supplies, food, and water in the parking lots of rundown motels to people living at the margins of our society. I took these risks because my own self, my own connection to my values and my family was a more grave loss to me than a little anxiousness over my personal safety. It is our lives that are on the line. Our capacity to live the lives that align with our values, that honor our relationships, that is what is at stake. That sort of living, the living we were meant for, will always be worth the risk. What we need protected from is our own capacity to remove ourselves from truly living due to our own fear. What we need protection from is our misconception that protection means we will endure no suffering. What evil is the harm we create when we attempt to shield ourselves from the precious, precarious life that we have. May we face our fears, ground ourselves in love, and protect the fullness of our lives and of our world.